Will Keller is a devoted father, public speaker, and educator committed to advancing true freedom through natural law and objective morality. He's known for his ability to simplify deep philosophical concepts into clear, actionable wisdom. So we're going to get that right now. Take it, Will.
Thank you, Leslie. Appreciate it. Yeah, doing it live right here in StreamYard. This is fantastic. Ladies and gentlemen, coming to the end of the conference. I hope you've all found great value in this event. We've put some, blood, sweat, tears, resources, and all of that has to do with fire itself. So what do I mean by the spirit of fire? I already did a presentation called The Spirit of Water, and I will do one on earth, air, metal will be incorporated in earth as well. Then I will finish on the ether itself, which is the accumulation of all the elements. Now, a lot of people, they might think that's kind of, woo-woo type stuff, new agey maybe. It's actually very esoteric, and it's extremely ancient from the dawn of time. Absolutely. I can say that with confidence because of what I'm going to explain today. So, the spirit of fire. And when I say fire, as we go through this presentation, I quite literally mean fire, but also metaphysical, not only physical, psychological, allegorical, and, metaphorical. I mean, archetypal. Every category is related to what I'm calling fire, right? Now, a big part of my work is animism. This is a core foundational topic of my work itself. And what is animism? Now, the ignorant or the person that has no idea what animism really is would immediately correlate that to, primitive. This is what primitive indigenous cultures believe. And yeah, there's accuracy there, right? This is what I call the first world. These are people that live closest to nature. Obviously, a packed, condensed city would be, third world, in my opinion, because you are 3 times removed, many more times removed from the natural world itself. But can we actually separate ourselves from nature? Absolutely not, because we are a part of nature. So let's look at the word animism real quick, because this actually sets the whole foundation of the perceptive worldview that we are going to dissect the spirit of fire and what fire is. So animism comes from anima, which is Latin, which quite literally means animation, life, breath, energy. These are all words that explain the life force and the animating principle in all things in reality, right? So every ancient culture in the past has seen plants, minerals, mountains, lakes, the sky, the sun, the stars, every living thing as having this vital life force energy derived from the Great Spirit, the One, the All, whatever term that you want to attach to it. I will use the Great Universal Spirit because the word God itself, right, has so much baggage and cultural connotation as in a deity. I am talking about a living dynamic force that penetrates everything and is within everything. So animism simply is the worldview that everything is consciousness, everything is energy, and everything is alive to certain degrees and levels. And that would include the elements, right? So the worldview of living reality, this is animism, recognizes nature as alive, intelligent, and lawful, as in natural law or the laws of nature. It sees the forces of the world not as dead matter, but as dynamic processes that teach through observation and consequence. Nature becomes the ultimate mentor, revealing truth through interaction rather than belief. To study the elements is not to study symbols. That's part of it, right? Very minor part. But it's to study how reality actually operates. Okay? So we are not, or I am not inventing meaning. We are talking about observable characteristics that anyone can see, recognize, and come to understand at various levels, right? So why the elements matter. This is the architecture of change, of reality itself. The elements are the base level of what we would call, or I would call, the great universal spirit, right? It is pure expression, pure form, metaphysically and physically, right? So these are attributes that are very important. Elemental forces as laws of reality. The elements are not metaphors or belief systems. They describe how objective reality operates across nature, consciousness, and human behavior. Every condition, physical, psychological, or social, arises from the metaphysical elemental dynamics interacting lawfully. To understand the elements is to understand how reality moves, changes, and responds from the foundational forces, the base levels. So you cannot change a condition without understanding the forces that create it, right? So self-discovery through elemental awareness. The elements reveal not who you think you are, but how you actually operate. Remember, fundamental and foundational attributes of objective reality. And of course, this corresponds to our own internal ecology and how the self works. Self-discovery is not introspection alone. It is pattern recognition. The same forces that shape ecosystems, weather, and stars operate within the human psyche itself. When we understand the elements, we see how thoughts become actions, actions become habits, and habits become outcomes. Change begins when we stop fighting reality and start working with it. And this is why understanding the elements is so important, right? Because when we have a sense of what fire actually is on all of those levels, right? Metaphysical, physical, psychological, we can start to look within our own mentation and our own habits from those foundational characteristics. And I'll get in, we'll get more into detail as we progress. So the fire element. Let's talk about some just basic correspondences that most everyone can kind of relate with, right? Well, fire, it is objective, right? Fire it has heat, it has light, it's expansive, it moves upward, which is why the alchemical symbol is a triangle, right? It looks even like a fire. If you have like the fire in the image right there, it has the symbol, the geometrical pattern of an upward triangle. Fire is activation. It has initiative, transformation, purification. It symbolizes will, passion, courage, and assertiveness. These are core qualities. We can easily just observe fire and we can see that it must be cared for, it must be respected, right? Fire can heat your whole house, you can cook your food, you can distill a tincture down and make a medicine. You could burn your house down. You could burn your neighborhood down, your community, right? So fire just is certain things. And we can come to know these things and understand how they function in reality and what that means for humanity in the aggregate and our relationship to nature. The spark. Remembering fire. Fire as primordial force. Fire is one of the most ancient forces known to existence. Long before civilizations, belief systems, or language, fire was already shaping worlds through creation, transformation, and destruction. It is not chaotic by nature. It's catalytic. So fire is a catalyst. Fire initiates change where stagnation once ruled. If fire can be summed up with one word, it would be, in my opinion, transformation itself. So when we think about certain aspects of fire, probably one of the biggest would be the sun itself, right? The giver of life. Whole religions have been created all on the sun, the S-U-N, the solar deities, the solar cults, Christianity, it's all upon the element of fire and the sun, right? So we'll get more into the transformational and the forces and how fire is a catalyst later on. Fire and consciousness. Fire has always symbolized illumination, awakening, and awareness. Wherever fire appears, something becomes visible that was once hidden, right? To de-occult something is to activate the element of fire, to bring something from the darkness into the light. To educate oneself is also an element of fire itself, to illuminate, right? From knowledge, of knowledge. Consciousness itself behaves like fire. It expands, it consumes illusion, and transforms perception. Nothing truly awakens without heat, right? The whole awakening process is the element of fire, right? Because we have to burn the illusions, the dogmatic belief systems that we have. And of course, as the symbolic mythology and story of the phoenix awakens from its own self-sacrifice and ashes, it becomes anew. And the phoenix is not a water phoenix. It's not even an earth phoenix. It's a fire phoenix for a reason, right? For a reason. So the symbolic characteristics have profound meaning, and we can also understand this in our own life via even our own awakening journey. Coming into the knowledge of what is going on in the world, what truly is going on. You are not the same person as you were before. That person is dead. This is why death is so important, and this is why fire is so important. Yes, we need to burn ourselves, right? Burn those bad habits, the dogmatic belief systems that we still hold, so we can arise anew. That's what fire does. Just as fire burning a field, right, revitalizes the soil and the earth and activates many nutrients and plants as well. There's a rhyme and a rhythm to nature. We can come to know this. This is all animism. There are no books on animism. Nature and life itself and interaction is the heart of animism. The living flame, fire in nature. Sorry, forgot my note. So fire in the natural world. Fire exists in the sun, obviously, right? It's lighting. We could see volcanism and even human metabolism, right? There's certain characteristics of the human body itself. The heart is a fire element organ, right? The circulatory system, it's pumping the life force, the energy, that is fire. That is a fire element. The digestive tract, right? The breaking down and the burning up of the hypochloric acid in the stomach, that acid, that's heat, right? That's the breaking down and burning of the food that we take in. So the solar plexus, right? The guts. In the Eastern traditions, solar, it's talking about the sun. It is referring to the element of fire itself, right? So action itself is the element of fire. Nature uses fire lawfully and cyclically. It clears what is dead and renews what can grow. Fire is part of life's rhythm, 100%. 100%. Some of the most nutrient-dense soil comes from, the volcanic area, right? So we can see this. We can observe the natural world, and we can come to understand correspondences of the fire element itself, right? And even in all the mystery traditions of, in the tarot tradition of wands representing, stabs representing fire element, the sun, Mars, Aries, all of these correlations, they're just symbolic for representing a certain attribute of energy and life and nature. Creative versus destructive fire. Fire destroys only what cannot endure. I'll read that again. Fire destroys only what cannot endure. Forest fires renew ecosystems. Controlled burns prevent catastrophes. Creation and destruction are phases of one process. Nature never wastes fire. The first torch, fire and humanity. Fire as humanity's first technology. Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. The discovery of fire, I think it's always been here, but then again, who knows? But still, fire is a technology, just as water can be a natural technology, and the earth and air and all the elements, right? We look at ether itself. The dielectric magnetism can be harnessed and used as technology for humanity as free energy. But yes, fire itself, technology in itself is a fire element. So fire gave humanity warmth, protection, metallurgy, right? And civilization, what we know as modern civilization with our modern tech, computers. This is all electricity. This is all fire element. It extended human capability beyond instinct. With fire came power. With power came responsibility, or the lack thereof, right? This points to what Tyler Bloyer was talking about within his presentation. That lack of moral and ethical responsibility with the power of technology, or the power of the element of fire. What happens when you don't respect fire? What happens when you don't understand how to control a burn? Objectively, you will get burned 100%. The Promethean fire, this is the mythos, most popular, and there's many across cultures. Fire was sacred and guarded. It symbolized knowledge and divine responsibility. The myth of Prometheus reminds us power without wisdom carries consequence, right? Prometheus stole fire from the gods. Now, that is a symbolic representation that humanity might not have earned the knowledge of fire. Even as we are now today with AI and the advanced technology, we obviously don't earn that technology, Because if we did actually earned it, that the moral and the ethical wisdom would be there in all technology that we utilize, right? So more or less, we are kids juggling with flaming flaming balls, right? Or flaming sticks, whatever they're called. The inner flame, fire within an individual. So now we're stepping into the internal ecology, our internal environment. Fire is willpower. It is the will. Within every individual lies an inner fire, the capacity to choose and direct action. This fire is will, not impulse. Will is sustained intention aligned with purpose. Without inner fire, no action endures, right? This is talking about the impulse, the reactionary, which I would still say is an elemental, fire, but it's undisciplined, right? It's like a wildfire. We want focused, harnessed, disciplined fire, which we're going to talk about that right now. Discipline versus impulse. Impulse burns quickly and collapses. Discipline is fire under control, steady and refined. Mastery begins when fire obeys consciousness, right? We are the wielders. We are consciousness, wielding and endowed with all of these elements. Why is it important to understand the attributes of fire, of all the elements, right? Obviously, for self-development, for moral wisdom and ethical upgrades within our own action and behaviors. Conscious willpower is disciplined fire, right? There are things that we can do on a day-to-day basis. Set goals, have that integrity, say what we are going to do, to develop this discipline and to develop the willpower within our own individual lives. That is kindling and harnessing the fire element. Most people nowadays being extremely reactive on certain things. This is just the fire element as a living force, dominion over their individuation, right? The moral fire, natural law. Absolutely. Fire as truth. Fire reveals reality by burning away illusion. Under natural law, truth does not negotiate. It manifests consequence. Illusion cannot withstand heat. Reality is the ultimate fire. Nothing false survives it. Meaning, if you don't align your perception to objective reality, that which is and that which is manifesting, right, then you are obviously in a delusion, and that will not suffice, right? That's not durability or longevity. So, fire being the active principle of life is reality because reality is active, right? Truth burns deception. And when we as truth speakers, obviously harnessing that fire element, we can project that, right? You could say, we're spitting fireballs, metaphorically, that can burn down the dogma and the false beliefs that people hold. Cause, effect, and responsibility. Every action is an ignition. Moral choices spread beyond the self. Power without care creates destruction, not freedom. People, we always talk about, dropping seeds, planting seeds. Well, you could plant an acorn and it might not do anything for 7 to 10 years, right? We want to spark. We want to light candles. We want that spark of ignition. And we do that by telling truth and also providing accountability and responsibility, letting people know the dire straits that we are in, not having people just agree, oh yeah, I totally agree with you. Okay, then prove it, activate, do something. It is time. That is lighting another's candle, and that candle lighting the bonfire of moral right action. That's what that is. The flame of freedom. Tyranny fears fire. Control depends on apathy and confusion. Disciplined will threatens every system built on obedience. Fire awakens sovereignty. Now, let me just give you the visual from the elemental worldview, right? What is tyranny, right? What is a society that is its main beliefs is based in moral relativism and the belief in human authority, and it's living in slavery itself, right? Well, it would look like stagnation. It would be, there are dark sides to these elements as well, right? It's definitely not alive. It's definitely not a fire element. It would be frozen ice. It would be a tundra. It would be a swamp, earth, elemental, just stagnation, a pool, because you have the water element. That emotional decay is there. The lack of life, the lack of creativity, right? Fire, when you light a fire, it is life. It is creation. Sure, it is burning, but it is creating. This is why the eternal flame and fire element has always been seen as the element of life. So, of course, tyranny fears fire. It fears that righteous indignation, that righteous flame, that flame of truth, the sword of truth, right? So real anarchy, reclaiming the flame. You know, it's interesting that the mainstream, the social engineers, the programming and the conditioning, when they say anarchy, what's the image the normies, the majority of people get in their mind? Fire. Cars burning, buildings burning down, neighborhoods burning down. Oh, look at these people, they're burning stuff down, right? That is sorcery. That is taking the knowledge of the elements and using them for dark magic to influence perception. That's not real anarchy. Most of us here know this, right? So it's time to reclaim the flame. The inversion, obviously one of the main dark occult techniques that they do, flip truth on its head, invert and pervert truth, invert nature and how it operates. Mainstream culture depicts anarchy as chaos and burning cities. The inversion equates freedom with destruction. True anarchy means no rulers, no masters, no slaves. Real anarchy is inner fire forged. Inner fire forged into right action. That's what real anarchy is. Because we all should know anarchy is an effect. Freedom is an effect. An effect of what? Moral right action. Action is a fire element. How do you get to moral right action? It is forged internally, internal in the inner forge of individuals, understanding the elemental forces and how to activate them and harness. You could see, obviously, what was it, the 17th, February 17th, we had the Ring of Fire, so I threw that in there. The Ring of Fire has been depicted as inversion, symbolically, right? Because you have fire around the moon, right? So it's been symbolized as almost a dark time to pause and, don't act. during that time. It's false light. False versus true anarchy. Obviously, the false is chaos, reaction, and destruction. True anarchy, discipline, self-governance, moral order. Fire wielded builds freedom. Fire unleashed destroys blindly. Even the unbegun, the uninitiated, the unaware, right? All of these elements are within all of us, and they are being expressed in every individual that is alive, right? So even the normies are utilizing the fire element within the actions that they choose to take. The question is, what are they using that fire element of action towards? What are they supporting, condoning? The inner forge, this is the alchemical fire. Now, in the alchemical traditions, fire is, like I said earlier, fire represents, one word, transformation. In alchemy, you have to have fire, right? Using fire for distillation, evaporation, circulation, calcination. All of these include fire. It's interesting, the work in the alchemical tradition. Now, to get fire, what do you have to do? You have to chop wood. You have to get wood to light the fire, right? Even plants themselves, right? Wood is actually trapped light, is what it is, right? It is fire. Light is fire itself. The sun, the fire element, this might be a side tangent, but we're talking about the alchemical tradition here. It's something I'm very passionate about, being an herbalist. The sunlight, it activates in plants through photosynthesis. Plants literally grow and activate, form, and matter, plant tissue from the fire element of life, right? And then that grows plants, trees, right? And then we can harness that lumber, and then we use it to kindle an actual fire. So, calcination. Alchemy begins with fire, and illusions burn away under pressure. What survives the fire is what is real. Does that sound familiar to anyone? What survives the fire is what is real. The apophatic method, right? Burning that which is not away to find out that which is, right? This is a very fiery elemental process, right? Apophysis, the apophatic method. I say this all the time. How do you find a needle in a haystack? You burn the hay. That which remains is what? The needle. In alchemy, in distillation, or even in the spagyric methodology, right? You're using the fire to heat up, to separate the vital essence, right? The spirit, the Agni in the Eastern, the Vedic traditions, that the energy, and you're separating that, and then you can bring it back together in a more pure form. So fire burns down the impurities, false beliefs. The blue flame is refined fire, is focused and precise. The goal is not more fire, but pure fire. That reminds me of the movie The Legend, right? 1980s, Tom Cruise, really good movie. There's the scene where the little goblin is saying, "Fire, fire, burning higher." I forget the rest, but more fire is not the point. What is a blue flame? It is pure fire. This is what the blue flame initiates, the blue flame, this is what it meant for the alchemical traditions. Oops. So cultivating discipline. disciplined flame. True fire grows through consistent right action. Small voluntary acts of discipline strengthen the will. Fire responds to commitment, not excitement. When you're excited, that is obviously an elemental force of fire, but it's very chaotic. It's very sporadic. It's like a sparkler. You're throwing little sparks everywhere, right? Fire responds to commitment. When you are caring for the forge or for the fire, right? You're doing it with great care. Steady burn. Consistent right action. Acts of discipline, consistency. This is what the disciplined flame is. And of course, Brandon Spencer touched on this, right? Carrying the lantern, passing the torch. The lantern of wisdom. This is an occult message that has been in many of the mystery traditions, right? The lantern of wisdom, passing the torch, right? This is about the education of the occult arts and sciences to the next generation. Obviously, we want this to be de-occulted. We want it to be common sense knowledge that everyone knows this. But educating the youth is absolutely vital. A lantern does not lose its flame by lighting another. Wisdom survives only when carried forward, right? So you have to care for the lantern itself. A generation that fails to transmit wisdom, the lantern, does not break the chains of oppression. It simply hands it forward. Stewardship across the generations. If we do not teach true freedom and natural law, the next generation will inherit confusion. Passing the torch is stewardship. Freedom is preserved through the transmission of the element of fire, of right action. So, getting down to the spirit of fire. What does it mean? I mean, we can talk about it in all of these categories, the alchemical, the physical, health itself, right? When you have heartburn, there are certain plants and herbs that naturally are cooling, that are naturally a water element. Where do the fire element herbs, plants grow? The desert, the peppers, they're naturally spicy and hot. This is the expression of the fire element. We can see it in every aspect of life, health, psychological, spiritual, metaphysical, right? And even societal, in our behavior, in that eternal forge of doing the right thing. And we are harnessing that willpower by those small acts daily. Someone asked me, Will, how do I develop will? Will, you do that through forcing yourself to act in those small capacities, right? Say you will do something, then do it. You're going to do the cold plunge, do that every day. You're doing your push-ups, do that every day. You're going to eat a certain way or do a certain morning ritual, stick to it and do that. By you committing to those small acts, you're building integrity, and integrity is the kindling of that internal forge and flame of right action within oneself. So the spirit of fire has never been good or evil. It simply just is, right? It simply reveals what we do with the knowledge, the power itself. It warms or it consumes. It builds or it destroys. The difference is not in the flame, it is in the one who wields it. Right? The sword of truth can absolutely be used for self-defense. It can be used for violation and transgression, right? That sword, that symbol of fire itself. The spirit of fire is the principle of transformation made conscious. It is the force of will that initiates change, illuminates truth, and enforces consequence. Fire is the active power within nature and within the human being that refuses stagnation and demands growth through heat, pressure, refinement. Just like the forge. It is neither chaotic nor cruel. Fire is honest. The spirit of fire is disciplined energy aligned with purpose. The inner flame that forges sovereignty, burns illusions, and turns potential into reality. This is what this conference is about. Ignition. You, listening to my voice right now, those that have attended and viewed all of the fantastic presenters and artists within this conference, doing it, they are gifting sparks to light your lantern, to spark your crucible, to light your forge of moral right action. What say you? This is what it's about. Ignite hearts and minds. Just as mental, those thoughts, that mentation is active fire. And care, true care, compassion, courage is the element of fire. Everything that we talk about, the element of fire, is to do the right thing, is for true freedom. This is understanding what the spirit of the element of fire is all about. And ladies and gentlemen, I hope you ignite within your own right? Kindle that inner forge with care, with precision, and with discipline. And we hope to see you at the next funnel. Thank you all for your kind attention.